The Grand Illusion. An expanded tale of captivity and revelation. The majestic theater loomed on the corner of 5th and Mercy Street, its once grand facade faded and peeling like the memories of home I'd left behind in the holler. I missed the rolling hills and the smell of pine and earth. Here in Toronto, everything felt so foreign, with its concrete jungles and bustling streets. The marquee flickered and sputtered, its neon letters announcing, "Tonight. Your choice. Enjoy the show." I wondered who would even care about a show in a place like this. The heavy oak doors stood slightly ajar, revealing a warm glow that spilled out onto the cracked pavement, casting shadows that danced wildly in the night air. I was drawn to it like a moth to a flame, even though I barely understood why. People came in and out without buying tickets, drawn by something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I felt like an outsider, an interloper in a world that wasn't mine. Inside, the air was thick with the musty scent of old velvet and spilled liquor, mixed with something metallic that made me feel uneasy. The seats were mostly filled, and I could feel their eyes on me, judging and curious. I missed my cousin back home, my best friend who always knew how to make me laugh. Now, in this strange city, I felt isolated, different in a way that made my heart ache. The spotlight flickered on, illuminating the stage, while the heavy red curtain trembled slightly, as if it were alive. I could feel the anticipation in the air, a tension that made my skin prickle. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice crackled through the speakers, distorted and fuzzy. "Welcome to tonight's special performance." There was a warmth in the voice that felt eerily welcoming, but it sent chills down my spine. The stage manager stepped into the light, his smile too wide, his eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk searching for prey. "As always," he said, "you'll have a choice." The curtain rose, revealing tonight's performers. To stage left stood Lyric, a sharp-eyed black woman in a worn leather jacket, leaning casually against an amplifier. She spun a microphone in her hand, her other hand resting near a pistol at her hip. Her smirk was confident, almost challenging. I felt a strange connection to her, a fierce spirit that reminded me of my cousin, always ready to take on the world. To stage right, Marcel, a gaunt white man in classic mime attire, stood nervously, his eyes darting around. His makeup was smeared from sweat, and I could see the tension radiating off him. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He looked just as lost as I felt. A shiver ran through the audience, a shared understanding of something unspoken, something dark. They had all seen this show before. Last week's comedy night had ended with Lyric firing warning shots during her rap, leaving the audience cowering in their seats. Marcel had just stood there, miming a noose around his neck for 53 minutes straight. I could hardly believe anyone would find that funny, but here laughter felt like a distant memory. Lyric stepped forward, her presence commanding. "What's the matter?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "Not happy with your options?" She spun the microphone like a toy, and I felt my heart race. "Let me guess, last time wasn't funny enough for you?" A man in the third row flinched. I could see the fear in his eyes, and for a moment it echoed my own feelings of being out of place in this big city. The stage manager cleared his throat, a wet sound that made my stomach churn. Now, he chided, his smile unchanging but his eyes darkening. "Let's not be difficult." His tone felt like a warning, and I shivered. "You know the rules. One performer, one show, then refreshments after." An elderly woman stood up, her knees creaking like the floorboards back home. "I choose Lyric," she declared, her voice shaking but determined. "At least she's interesting." The crowd erupted in whispers, panic spreading like wildfire. "Are you crazy?" "She shoots people." "Better than the mime. Last time he just stared at us for an hour." I felt my heart race. What was I doing here? I just wanted to find a place where I belonged, where the laughter of my cousin echoed in my ears. Lyric rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," she scoffed, hands on her hips. "You all act like the outside world is some post-apocalyptic nightmare." She pointed toward the doors. "There's a Timmy Ho-Ho's across the street." I grabbed a maple pecan muffin before coming in. Barista's name was Sarah. "Where's too much perfume?" The audience recoiled, disbelief etched on their faces. I felt that disbelief too, the familiar ache of longing for home. The stage manager had painted a picture of danger outside, but I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Suddenly, Marcel broke character, lunging forward to grab Lyric's arm. His expression was frantic, and I could see the fear in his eyes. She looked at him, confusion written across her face. "Wait," she said slowly, her gaze narrowing. "You mean all this time?" The stage manager's smile dropped, his expression turning cold and unfeeling. His hand twitched toward his jacket. Bang. The gunshot echoed and I jumped, heart racing. Lyric's bullet struck the stage manager between the eyes, and he collapsed without a sound, leaving the theater in stunned silence. For 3 heartbeats, the world around me faded away. Then, click, click, click. All the exit doors unlocked at once, the sound echoing in my bones. Lyric turned to the crowd, her voice commanding. "What are you waiting for?" she shouted, gesturing wildly toward the doors. "Go." But no one moved. They couldn't move. Fear bound them to their seats, just like it bound me. I could feel the weight of years of conditioning, of being told to stay put, to be quiet, to not stir up trouble. Marcel was the first to break free. He bolted down the aisle, shoes thumping against the floor as he raced for the door, bursting through into the night without looking back. One by one, others began to rise. Some cried, tears streaming down faces that had long been numb. Others laughed, a sound so wild it felt like it could shatter the very walls around us. Most simply looked, lost like children waking from a nightmare. A young man in a stained hoodie hesitated at the threshold, hand trembling as he reached for the door handle. My heart pounded in my chest and I wanted to urge him on, to tell him it was okay. "Just open it," Lyric said softly, her voice breaking through the chaos. The door creaked open, and cool night air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of freedom. Across the street, the Timmy Ho-Hos glowed invitingly, the barista inside waving cheerfully. I felt a pang of longing for the warmth of home, for the laughter of my cousin, for a place where I belonged. The screams started then, not from terror, but from the realization that had washed over us all. There had never been any danger outside. No monsters, no terrible creatures. The real horror was the prison we had built for ourselves, the barriers we had allowed to grow. Epilogue. In the days that followed, the majestic theater stood empty, a ghost of its former self. The marquee's bulbs flickered out one by one, leaving it in darkness. The heavy oak doors closed with a finality that echoed in my heart. Some of the former audience members tried to warn others, their voices trembling with urgency, but most simply walked away, carrying their shame like a weight that pressed down on their shoulders. I found myself returning to the Timmy Ho-Hos, sitting with a latte in hand, gazing at the darkened theater. I wanted to laugh again, to feel the warmth of camaraderie with my cousin, but the ache of my new reality was still fresh. And if late at night, when the streets were quiet, the theater's doors creaked open just a bit, well, maybe it was just the wind. But a part of me wondered if it held something more, something waiting for those brave enough to step outside their fears. Final twist. The true horror came from within, shaped by the fears we allowed to control us, making us both victims and architects of our own imprisonment.